If you grew up in a black household, 9 times out of 10, if you ever said, like, I hate that, or like, I hate this as a kid, you probably got screamed at, yelled at, or punished in some way, which I'll get into that in a separate video. How, punishment for expressing feelings within the black community is like a cycle of generational trauma. But for right now, I'm just going to focus on one specific aspect. So, a lot of times, what we don't know is that that concept actually comes from, it's shared amongst a lot of cultures, but in particular, it is rooted in a lot of indigenous culture. Like the practice of speech itself, being able to manifest, is rooted in a lot of indigenous things. So, yes, the hate, like punishing you for saying I hate something, was extreme, but the overall concept of words having power, I would say words having power is true. I'm not talking about like the punishment aspect. I'm just talking about like I believe in words and spirituality and affirmations, and what we say often manifests. So that whole concept comes from a lot of indigenous populations, and in particular, I actually did a whole documentary on this where I flew to Japan and spoke to an indigenous community, the Ainu community. Particularly, I spoke to some women leaders within the Ainu community who spoke to us about how in ancient Ainu traditions, speech itself was dangerous and words could summon what they named. So I did a lot of research on this topic after I found out about it, and basically what she was describing was that Ainu speech had what some anthropologists would call taboo. So that just meant you never spoke certain words, you never spoke certain animal names. Like you don't say bear, you don't say owl, or maybe you don't say whale. During hunts or travel, you would use nicknames or metaphors. Instead, you might say the mountain guest or the old man, right? And this was because, after research and after speaking with the woman, which, by the way, if you want to watch our full interview, full documentary, it's on Incendiary Balloons, it's on the YouTube. That goes into much detail about like more of the systemic issues that Ainu community face. So if you want to watch that, you can watch it at incendiaryballoons.com and also on our YouTube at the link in bio, Incendiary Balloons Media. Just go on YouTube on our channel and search Ainu, or on my channel and say Ainu, Ainu. But anyway, it was believed that speaking a spirit's name carelessly could summon it. So similarly, when speaking of this applied to many things. So it didn't just apply to, when you were going in the woods, you wanted to avoid saying lion, or you want mountain lion, right? You wanted to avoid saying that because okay, sorry about that. My mic went out, so the audio might not be as clear on this when you hear it, but as long as you can hear me, we're good. But essentially, you would never go into the forest and say the actual name mountain lion, right? You would never say a mountain lion's approaching, because that was thought to summon the spirit of the mountain lion and bring you misfortune. And that same thing actually also applied to illnesses and Ainu culture. So a lot of traditional Ainu indigenous culture, they would use metaphorical languages or euphemisms, right? So you wouldn't say like the terminal disease name. You would say the visitor or the shadow, and you would use euphemisms like that. And this was to kind of like avoid the triggering event. But I think this was bigger than a euphemism. It was more in a sense. It was more in the sense of like linguistic ecology. And it's just interesting because I see the way that's also applied in African American culture today, and Black culture, and not even just our culture, but also in Latin culture and other indigenous cultures or Asian communities. We are often like that sort of history of creating euphemisms or not mentioning the words or not saying certain words, and words being so impactful and powerful translates and resonates in all different I don't want to say minority, translates and resonates in all different BIPOC communities. So I'm interested to hear you guys' thoughts, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, whether you think it's harmful or not. I do think it is harmful in some spaces, like the example I gave in the beginning about how we're taught to suppress our emotions in certain instances, or like with mental health, using euphemisms, saying, oh, he's just going through something, instead of actually identifying what it is that person is going through, or not empathizing with it, but acknowledging it and validating it. So that's the negative part of it for me, but there's also so many pros and positives to it, right? We're a very, very spiritual people naturally, so that spiritualness can be applied to when we're manifesting things for ourselves, when we're talking about positive affirmations, when we're speaking over people, when we're speaking life into people, speaking life into ourselves. Like, our words are so powerful, and recognizing that kind of delineates the physical from the mental, from the, I guess, spiritual, or the the different states of consciousness. So I think there's pros and cons to it, but I just thought that was really interesting that was something that we had in common with the Ainu community, like African American culture had in common with the Ainu community, when I interviewed the leader of the community, which, please check it out. The documentary, it's free on YouTube. It's really educational, really informative, and it's in the link in bio. So yeah, thank you. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Or are you kind of in the middle where you think it has its pros and cons?